Welcome back to the Geekcentric podcast, and welcome to our watch club for Marvel's What If. Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to exit the donut. Welcome to Watch Club. My name is Nate, and I'll be your guide through these alternate realities in this Watch Club for What If, Episode 3, titled, What If the World Lost Its Mightiest Heroes? If you're joining us for the first time, this is Watch Club, our weekly review series, kind of like a book club, but way better. Keep in mind, we will be going into full spoilers for this series and the MCU in general, so if you haven't watched this week's episode, you have to wonder, what if you did? And then came right back and joined us for some interdimensional conversation. Now, before we're all murdered for having really great hair, let me introduce you to all the lovely versions of hosts joining us today. First up, he's Justin.
Hey.
But what if he was slightly louder and just a little more huggable? He'd be Kevin Hudson.
It's an accurate description, sir. I'm gorgeous.
With amazing hair. Speaking of amazing hair, what if he was slightly shorter, much higher, and had longer curly hair? He'd be Darcy Hudson.
Yeah, that's me. Awesome hair, fits me to a T.
There you go, right? I want to see you. Darcy, I need to see you walking through the rain about to pick up Mjolnir. I need to see it.
I guess so. I just don't like drawing my hair. It takes forever.
Oh, yeah, totally. I mean, I
You
guess
knew
it wouldn't
Thor
matter.
was such a diva.
I mean, I think yeah, I can see it in that first Thor movie for sure, with his bleached eyebrows. I'm stoked to talk about yet another episode of the show with you guys. But before we bear witness to the Hulk popping like a big green zit, let's get into the intro. Humanity, so willing, so eager to face the impossible, yet blind to the bigger picture. Inside 1 week, 3 strange and separate stories unfolded. A genius battled with his demons inside and out, while the world met the monster hiding in the man, and a godly prince fell to earth. I am the Watcher, and where humans see chaos, I see the crucible that would transform this collection of individuals into a team of heroes. At least that's how things played out in one universe. But in this one, all the Avengers died. All right, so let's get into our high-level thoughts on the episode itself. Justin, why don't you kick us off?
Yeah, I think this is, the weirdest that it gets out of the 3 episodes. Very much inspired by what we already know from the MCU as being a specific week in the timeline that all of these events actually did happen. It's just a different take on that. But unlike the other 2 that are so rooted in like their cinematic stories, this had to be a little bit loose with its references across multiple movies to really tie in how it's like a different take on the MCU. And I think it did it like in a really fun way, like as a murder mystery.
Yeah, for sure. Kevin.
Yeah, I thought this was probably the most daring of the what ifs that we've gotten so far. Once you realize, oh wait, they're all gonna get pegged off here, you go, wow, they're really going for it here, really going for the jugular, and I really enjoyed that. I just thought they really crammed a lot into the episode in terms of actions and stuff, and I thought it was a great mystery and a great whodunit, but it almost felt like it was a bit of a rush to the finish line. So I would have almost liked 2 parts for this one.
Okay, Darcy.
Yeah, definitely my favorite episode of the 3 so far. I think I like it so much because unlike the other stories, like Justin was saying, where they're very grounded in not only like having to call back to those movies, but the stories of the characters didn't really change much. Like they still like kid gets picked up on Earth and goes to space and goes on an adventure, and then someone becomes a super soldier in the war. Like those are things we already know. I think that's why I like this one, is because it was so out there and so unique. It's like it really stood out. I watched it twice and enjoyed it both times just as much. Like it was such a good mystery, like we're saying. I think that was a really unique way to explore these characters in a different universe.
Oh, for sure. And I think it was definitely so much darker than our first 2 episodes. They still managed to keep it light, and we'll kind of talk about that as we go through. But the pacing was very quick. Kevin, to your point, I thought it maybe was a little too quick for my liking, and I like the idea that you mentioned that. Listen, they did a good job of giving the right information they needed to tell the story. I just think we could have spent a little bit more time with some of the characters, and so the fact that they structured it on Fury's big week and this well-known moment in time. I think it was interesting because it was not necessarily a shift in character, like you're saying, Darcy. It was a shift in a moment.
Yes.
And so for me, I kind of prefer the latter. I kind of prefer the opposite. I kind of prefer seeing the characters dramatically change. And so for this instance, it didn't quite jive for me as much.
Oh, see, that was what I thought was the best part of this was, it took what happened in the first episode there where, a small change of events puts Peggy with the serum instead of Steve. But like this one affects literally the whole world with one small change in details. And by the end of it, it didn't even really matter what that detail was. It actually wasn't all that compelling or even rational. I think it was so amazing to see one small little detail, just Butterfly affected everything to such a huge extent.
Butterfly, interesting choice of words. Yeah.
The fact that it was a unique story and like we already know all those characters and where they were coming from. I feel like they easily gloss over that part because that's not what we care about. It's what comes after that was the big thing. And again, the week happened so quickly. If you look at Nick Fury's appearances in the MCU to begin with, we get him 5 minutes at a time at most in these end credit scenes assembling this team. So it fit that same like narrative and that we're getting glimpses into these moments and how he's reacting and then thinking on the ball. I thought it was very great pacing and it fit really well for this episode that also ends with a kind of a cliffhanger. And I feel like that's what they were trying to build towards, less so the actual, whodunit itself.
Sure.
Yeah, that's exactly it, Darcy. I was on that same level. Like, this is almost part 2 to Nick Fury's story from Captain Marvel. This is his character story and a what if on how he turns out. Obviously with the ending too, you could really tie that in. He was the character of focus in this story, but the moment it impacts and it serves for these characters moving forward, like, and what the state of the world was after those events, that's pretty interesting, right? Like, that's a moment, as you guys have described. Like, it really does staple that in there.
Well, we'll get to all those moments and more, but before we do, let's start with maybe a question about kind of we're introduced to an MCU character who's not really a villain in our universe. And so I wanted to know, what did you think of the villain in this murder spree?
I'm going to jump in right now and say that Yellow Jacket is Hank Pym from the comics. The fact that they throw away the line in Ant-Man about how shrinking down to a certain, like entering the quantum realm with an unprotected helmet will affect your mind, and how he had to hang up the suit because it had affected his mind too much. I think the loss of his daughter is what catapults him into putting the suit back on and then degrading his mental state even further. So that is something straight from the comics where he loses his mind and becomes a villain. So I was all for that, and seeing that come to fruition and more true to the comics than the Yellow Jacket we got in the first Ant-Man, I was stoked, like as to all hell, basically. I was like freaking out in my seat, basically.
See, nothing gets me more riled up when talking about the MCU than, well, in the comics, and only because that's obviously that's its inspiration, but this is where 2 more minutes in this episode where they could have somehow you just broke it down in 30 seconds why Hank Pym was bad. Like, why the loss of his daughter changed his character so drastically that you justified the character's choices in that episode for me. Why couldn't the episode have done that?
What if we see that in season 2? If
It's a prequel as opposed to a sequel, that'd be interesting.
Exactly, right? So,
what if we start to see it in Quantumania?
Sure, but that doesn't help me right now.
Exactly. And Kevin, I completely agree with you on that. That was one of my big gripes with the episode, was the aspect of, like, cool to see him in this state. Really awesome. And I understood where they were coming from. And Darcy, I completely, without reading any of the comics or having any of that knowledge prior to you just mentioning it, I knew it was from, like, I could feel it was from the comics. I'm like, that's a comic thing.
Down to the costume. Comic accurate costume.
Sure.
Too.
But it didn't hit for me. And I don't think it's going to hit for...
hair and beard?
Right, and I don't think the hobo hair and beard are going to hit for a lot of the audience that are jumping into this this series.
I think this episode goes to show even more than the last ones is that, like, they are doing this for the people who watch all the movies multiple times and know the story. Because again, I was able to pick up on that mental degradation thing just because the throwaway lines they mentioned and the other things building up how it affects your mind on a different level and make you go crazy. And we saw the original Yellow Jacket in the MCU, Corey Stoll's character, completely succumbed to that. And I think I like that again was just, we saw that happen to Hank Pym because he didn't hang up the suit. So to me, it was all justifiable. As soon as we got that reveal, I'm like, I understand why, or at least why he is this way.
Can I ask a question, just because we do have Marvel Comics expert Darcy Hudson with us on this series? Why doesn't that happen then to our Ant-Man?
Well, they've explained that the proper helmet does protect, the brainwaves and stuff like that. And you got to think that he's refined the technology since the 80s or whatever when he started doing this stuff.
Right.
So the leap in technology will have protected his helmet more. And the fact that we now have Janet Van Dyne coming into play, I feel like if there was a problem, she can easily address it now.
I think it was interesting that they rooted Hank Pym's character as a villain and driven mad, as Darcy said. Like, I think that was intentional as maybe another character that we were supposed to associate. But I do feel like, yeah, there was questions that I still had about how he got to where he got, but I feel like that could be a part 2, right? Because everything that we've seen in these first 3 episodes, there could be more.
It's true.
It's like now you start to see that what else could they do?
Maybe it's a whole new series. What else? But no, I mean, I would love that, and I would love to see. And I think the fact that they left his character alive and didn't actually kill him off really does speak to that, Justin, of the idea of like we could explore more from this more comic accurate Hank Pym. Now, I want to know. I know this is kind of morbid, but speaking of Hank Pym, we got to see the death of 5 Avengers. So I ponder the question, and I ask this just in case any murderous dads wearing some yellow jackets are listening to this podcast. I need to know, which one of the 5 deaths was your favorite?
I think we're all probably going to say the same one. But the Hulk was pretty cool, right? But I think it's also like the science of what he did. Do you know what I mean? Like he used a Pym like enlarger on his heart, on the Hulk's heart while he was inside of him. Like, and that obviously being like the root of, I guess, where his anger would come from, right? It would just become so large that he would just blow up. Like, especially for someone in the MCU that they've said like can't die. He put a gun in his mouth and tried to blow his head off, and
right,
it didn't.
Well,
kill
they
him, right?
certainly hammered that home in that episode. Don't worry,
Right?
I can't die.
Yes.
Well, what was in the coffin at the end? Like, what was
maybe some collected dust.
yeah, exactly.
Goopy green bits of him.
Yeah, they're just like,
what I really liked was Hawkeye being framed in the murder of Thor, because that also calls back to another moment where in the comics, he kills Bruce Banner. So it was a very similar thing, like almost recollection where like he had to pull the shot because he had to, and then we realized that it was actually framed. So I thought it was a really unique way of calling back to that very pivotal comic moment while adding to this new story.
cool,
Totally.
interesting.
I'm going to have to go with Hawkeye's death, if only because this is where I figured it out. Or at least, I thought I figured it out. But as soon as in that, unbreachable room, Clint was killed, I was like, oh, it's Ant-Man. Now, why would it be Ant-Man? But it's got to be Ant-Man. And so it did still throw me for a bit of a twist at the end, but...
Were you expecting Scott Lang to be the character? Or did you think Hank Pym?
No, I thought it was going to be Scott Lang. Like, I just thought Ant-Man. I didn't even think of Hank Pym, you know what I mean?
Okay, yeah.
And I don't look at the credits at the beginning of the episode because I don't want to know who's in the episode.
Well, no, they didn't put Michael
personally.
Douglas's name there.
They didn't? Okay. He was one
yeah.
of the ones they didn't? Because I know they put a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think for myself, I love the Hulk one. I think the actual Thor dying, I think, was kind of almost poetic in the way that they did it with the lightning strike coming down. Because, that lightning strike is meant to empower the god of thunder.
Yeah.
And so to see it kind of happen right at the moment as an arrow goes through him, I was kind of, the only thing that kind of threw me off about that, though, I will say, is when arrow killed Thor...
Darcy will justify.
Darcy, go for it, please.
So you
got to
think, he basically just lost almost all his powers, all his confidence in himself from being banished to Earth. So he is just as mortal as anyone else. Most Asgardians are. So without that hammer reclaiming his true power of Thor, he is just a really jacked dude. So
wow. So had it been like even a few seconds later when he could like hold on to it, maybe,
no,
or he would have
because
had
he's
to
still
have picked
not
it up?
worthy. Yeah, he would have had to pick it up, which is later on in the movie when he calls it to himself. So
right.
He was moral, very much so in that first Thor movie, and that's what I thought made that movie cool. And I thought it was very interesting to show how fragile he was in just a simple scene in this one.
I think my biggest thing, though, that that bothers me about the murdering of all of the Avengers is Thor's situation. Like, if we're to think of this as the week in, Fury's life when this all went down, this is their first interaction with Thor. They don't know much about him, which means then he couldn't have been recruited to be part of the Avengers initiative because he wasn't. They didn't know about him. So I think this kind of was a bit of a plot hole.
Oh, that's a good point.
Least in the MCU, they established how the introduction of Thor really opened up the cosmic door for Earth's awareness of the possibilities of outside threats from Earth. So
I'm sorry, I just gotta jump in here because that same thing, we know that the Avengers Initiative was planned in the main MCU. That actually happened. He had that file and was planning to recruit him. What I think he was basing that on is the fact that we know in the 40s, Red Skull went and tracked down a Tesseract using Norse mythology. So if that has to be true, Howard Stark knowing that must forming S.H.I.E.L.D. being like, we can't rule anything out. Gods exist. So since S.H.I.E.L.D.'s foundation, they've operated under the assumption that gods are real. And Fury being the guy that he is, maybe saw or read stories about Thor and realized he's the hero we need if he's the hero of Asgardian
But
tales.
that context in the MCU hasn't been established.
That has to be the case. Like, Fury knew in the MCU as well, and I can only justify that as being S.H.I.E.L.D. operating under the fact that gods are real.
I don't know. I just feel like in the MCU, in the movies that we watched, they had established Fury learns about Thor from the events of Thor and becomes prepared and is aware of bigger things. Even at that point, he's not even wanting to recruit him. It isn't until he shows up that he's actually part of the recruitment. Everyone else is earthbound. They were the ones that he was recruiting, right? So it's a weird sort of plot thing that I think, to the point of what Kevin and Nate were pointing out, narratively they could have just explained a little bit more.
A quick
how
15,
he got lucky.
Quick 15 seconds of exposition for us noobs.
Because him got lucky there when he killed Thor, right? So
yeah, yes. I agree 100%.
Before we move on to just talking about these deaths, I wanted to talk about the setup for Black Widow's death was awesome, because when she looks behind her down the hallway at the library, can you hear the little wings fluttering by? Like Kevin said, like after I clued in as soon as it was the Hulk exploding, basically, because for some reason getting bigger made me think of Ant-Man or Giant Man in this case. But that just hearing those wings coming down, it's like, oh, am I right? Am I on the right track with this? Are those ants coming to get her or something like that? So I thought it was a really cool setup, or like, again, call back to those movie cues where we hear the ants before we see them type thing.
I did want to know, last week we saw Uatu, the Watcher, show up. He's the, for those who don't know who Uatu is, he's the guy at the beginning of the show. And we see him show up above the fields of Wakanda, witnessing the abduction of T'Challa. And this week, I think we saw him again. So, Kevin, I have you on Watcher Watch this week. Where did that big cosmic boy show up?
Well, I mean, this was the most glaring appearance we've gotten so far, and it's when Coulson is, I guess, driving towards the S.H.I.E.L.D. compound, and the whole scene, I mean, there's just this weird, abrupt music change to an odd choice of music as you see this car going across the landscape, and it fits so perfectly because it really was jarring for the watcher to just be like, boom, smack there watching, and I think, I mean, what's the deal here? Is it because things are so much different than he's accustomed to seeing them go in this story? I don't,
He's even more interested?
He's like, this is almost getting out of hand.
Maybe he's interacting, right? Like, I think, Darcy, you said it, like, he is known to say, like, oh, I don't want to get involved, but he's going to get involved. And maybe that's why we're seeing him, right? Like, with, more, in the landscape and, watching, right? So
there was also a second instance of seeing him in this episode.
Yeah,
another big pivotal moment.
Yeah.
Where it's when Fury, or I guess Loki in Fury's disguise, approaches Hope's gravestone, and that's where Hank, is the big reveal.
Right, he's
and so you
behind the
see
bridge,
the Watcher right there in the clouds, basically. And again,
yeah.
I'm saying the thing that Kevin hates, but I'm going to stand by it because that's where they're getting all these stories from. In the comics, he, like I said, he is known for breaking that one rule in the most roundabout way ever, because he won't directly step down and be like, put his hands between people like, no, don't fight. He more is like the guy to be like, oh, this guy over here here kind of nudges him in the right direction to make the right, connections to then go forth and fight the bad guy type thing. So I think his appearance becoming, again, more prominent in this episode is maybe as we see darker timelines, we see him start to lose his resolve in just watching.
Or do you think he might be a little bit more hands-on than we expected? Because, I mean, maybe Uatu was involved and it wasn't Luck.
Seeing the Watcher more in the landscape and peering down, I think that is the indication that he is, kind of getting his hands in it, right? Like,
yes, I don't think he's not one to guide towards death. That's not in his characters. I don't think he's helping Hank Pym at all, like Nate was saying there.
Okay.
Thank goodness.
He's
I like him.
He's on the team of good guys and always wants to see the good guys win. That's why I think he was so present in this one, because he was not used to seeing a story go this way.
What if he's just like, okay, I've watched this timeline, this part of the timeline go down millions of different ways. I'm used to the finish. And then all of a sudden, one of the Avengers gets popped. And he's like, oh, interesting. Like, he's just getting a front row seat to watch this because this one is compelling. He wants to know who done it, just like the rest of us.
Yeah, I hope he's eating like some cosmic popcorn
He's
in the next
new
episode.
popcorn meme. Exactly.
So okay, as far as the Watcher is concerned, then we will need to have someone on Watcher Watch each week, and we'll see if maybe we can keep that a running segment. I hope he keeps showing up. I hope we get him even interacting with these characters at some point. I think that would be really cool to see. I think we're going to see it.
Yeah,
I think we're
going
to see it.
Maybe
Totally.
Yeah.
I think that the opening, like his opening spiel at the beginning of this episode, was almost very relevant to how it ended. Is like, that's how the Earth's Mightiest Heroes were formed, or like the group came together, or at least that's how it happened that way. So like, what if this is the beginning of him starting to realize that all these stories might be able to be pieced together to, form some sort of, heroic team? Because we have seen that splash shot of the Battle of New York kind of reimagined with some of these characters in these episodes. So I'm wondering if this is the thing that makes him start thinking about interacting more.
That is a compelling thought, especially because he is our guide. He is the one that's taking us across these stories. So maybe what is happening is we're seeing the characters that he is going to start to, as you described, interact with and create his own little pocket something that is very Uatu style.
We get the Uatu cinematic universe, the UCU. Anyways, as we're wrapping up our discussion on the episode, let's talk about the end of this episode. A few things to mention. Number one, 5 of Earth's mightiest heroes are dead. Number 2, Loki is president, or I guess like ruler of like the Earth. And number 3, Nick Fury is standing with 2 captains, with Steve frozen in ice and Captain Marvel right behind him. So I want to know, what could this all mean for this universe? And what if we got to come back to this universe?
Well, I obviously think that Captain Marvel appearing, we've seen how effective she is against, army-sized alien races. So I feel like she can easily clean up, the Loki problem going on this planet, and Cap being there beside her only further that goal. So I can totally see if we come back to it and go to a sequel route with this story, it'll definitely be the story of how the 2 Caps work together to form a new team. Because again, we know in the MCU there are all these other, superpowered individuals just waiting to be found by either the Watcher or S.H.I.E.L.D. or something like that. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see like another formation of the Avengers if we come back to the story.
Yeah, we see a different Avengers. Maybe that's why we saw the deaths.
Loki's not the threat here. I mean, he didn't even see that Malevolent as a leader. I mean, he's got the control he's always wanted, but I don't think he came off as that evil, right? It's not like he had them on their knees like in the Avengers movie where he was basically making everybody worship and grovel at his feet. But I think what's going to happen is Thanos is going to see that Earth is ripe for the taking without any protection. So maybe he doesn't need Loki to get him that Infinity Stone. He'll do it himself, and it's going to be a team up of the Asgardians and the humans to maybe fight a threat like Thanos.
Oh, interesting. And it is interesting to also think of, like, are they all different universes? Are some of them the same? Like, as we go through, obviously we want to see these universes again, but is it possible that, like, some of these things could be happening in the same universe?
I mean, based on what the Watcher is saying, he's always saying one small change can affect the entire thing. So I feel like these are our separate universes, especially given the fact that over the 3 episodes we've seen technically 3 different shields. If you're looking at, like, Captain Carter's, the one that the Collector had collected, and then the one that's still in ice down here. So these are clearly 3 separate timelines.
Yeah, I think though that they're going to go different with all of them. I don't think that it really says to try to tie all of them together. I think that it makes sense if they're so far distant, but we pop in and out of, like, different ones, right? And then we learn what things might be connected and what might not be connected.
Yeah, I don't want them connected.
Yeah, I want to see Captain Marvel and Captain America as, like, the leader of a new Avengers. That
Like
would be
Cap and Cap? Let's go.
Yeah. I want to see continuations of these
series.
stories, but I don't want them to be connected at all.
Yeah.
Really
think
sell
that
this
is-
multiverse idea.
But Kevin, I do think that is how Uatu is going to play a bigger role in this story. I think he is going to start to say, I want some action figures from here, I want some action figures from here, and let's put them in the toy box.
But that means he's mixing different timelines. That's not
Right.
that all these stories are taking place on one. That's
On
what
one,
I don't
right.
want them to
Yeah,
do.
exactly.
I get it.
While we're talking about Loki, just announcing his rule over the Earth, I just thought about his entrance into the UN there was very reminiscent of Wakanda's emergence into the global scene, basically. Like that one scene right there,
100%.
I was like, I thought it was a very odd choice to take, these Avengers movies and then make that random throwaway to Wakanda, which we haven't seen or hadn't seen yet at that point in this timeline. So I thought it was a very unique cinematic cue almost.
Yeah, it also signifies very much so, like, a conquering. Like Kevin was saying, like, he's not malevolent. Like, he doesn't have the Chitauri. He doesn't have an army of, like, driven by the ruthless Thanos to do his bidding. Instead, he has...
I mean, he's got the Asgardian army.
Yeah, and he has the Asgardians, but these are his people, right? Remember, the Loki that we would have seen in the Avengers feels very distant and lost being an Asgardian, and he doesn't feel like he actually is. But I think that here he's accepting of it, and it's more of a balance because of the death of Thor. Look what kind of character came out of Loki.
If he's the same Loki as that we saw in, like, the first Thor movie, I think that he's probably just pretty happy that Thor is dead, because now that means he's king. So,
Exactly,
like, he's probably upset to a certain extent, but he wanted to rule since the day he was born, basically. So now that that's going to be a sure thing, I think he's just like, I'll do this with the Asgardians on my side because I can. They have to listen to me. I'm now their prince. And only prince.
If anything, this is, like, the best week for him, because not only has he taken over, the mantle of king, but now he's also taken over Midgard, and he's, all the Avengers are dead. It's just so funny to see, like, as soon as there's no Avengers, Loki just strolls right in and becomes
that's
ruler.
exactly it.
It's so fun.
Basically, in the MCU, this was an amazing week for Nick Fury that led to him solidifying his team and the inevitable failure of Loki. But here, we have the flip. It's kind of impacting both characters really,
cool.
really interestingly.
And you guys do really bring up a good point that no matter what happens, Loki always finds his way here with the intention of doing, something bad. That's interesting.
Again, we can't talk about Loki all this time without having that one, again, blatant kind of Mephisto watch thing throwaway where Fury says, deal with the devil. And it's like, again, we're getting the devil relation to him.
Marvel
just
loves
after,
the devil.
hot off the heels of Loki, where they referred to him as the devil with just a simple stained glass window and stuff like that. They just love, potentially having a big bad devil out there. So can't get away from it, seems.
I want them to let's get the bad devil and let's get that good devil. Daredevil, where are you? Get into that MCU. But before we kind of wrap up, I want to know your overall thoughts and final score, which for this episode, I think appropriately, we'll be rating on a scale of 1 to 5 dead Avengers. Darcy, we're going to start with yourself.
Well, I feel like it's probably pretty obvious where I'm going to be going with this one. It's my favorite episode of the 3 so far. I can't wait to see where it goes. Like, if they've done this, like they've killed the Avengers, what else and what other risks are they going to take in telling these stories? And I can't wait to see what those are. And again, the pacing I loved, all the callbacks to those movie moments that are big, and then just completely flipping them on their head, where we see that people die regularly. I just thought that was great, unique. 5 out of 5 dead Avengers here. I'll kill them all, please. Thank you.
Awesome. Okay. Wow. 5 out of 5. Jeez, you're giving out a
Fucking
5 out of
love
5.
this.
It's only the 3rd episode, Darcy. Come on.
Okay, you did it. I explained
Last
an
week
episode
it was
longer,
your
so
5 out of 5.
Well, I'm happy. I hope we all get a 5 out of 5 out of this series. Kevin, let's move to you.
Yeah, I really, really enjoyed this episode as well. It's probably my favorite of the bunch. And again, because I just thought they did such a great job with sort of spinning this story into a whodunit. And like last week was fun and it was good and it was very Ocean's 11. Like I'm surprised they didn't go into split screens as they were explaining their plan and everything.
Yeah.
Gamora but I just thought this was really, really compelling. I would have liked a few more minutes to let a few moments and events breathe, because it was like, wow, watching the Avengers get slaughtered in the span of 15 minutes was pretty intense. And looking around, you see like open mouths, like, wow, and so just a bit of time. And I did... Well, a few jokes really landed for me. I thought a bit of the writing felt a bit forced, and it was like, we get it. You like his hair. You don't need to say that joke 8 times in the episode. So that was a bit clunky, and it was almost as a means to soften the blow of losing the Avengers, whereas I would have preferred really go in hard at what we're witnessing instead of trying to lighten it up. That's my only complaint, though. Loving where the show's going. Like Darcy says, where could they possibly go next to elevate the stakes even further?
What
That's
else?
really exciting. But yeah, there we go. But I'm going with a solid 4.4 out of 5 dead Avengers.
Oh, so there's like a fourth of Hulk sitting somewhere?
Yeah,
maybe?
they could only find so much of them, right?
Yes, exactly. Justin, how about yourself?
Yeah, this episode was good. It was daring. It followed the theme of kind of taking what we know to be in the MCU as something strong, like Thanos, like the Infinity Stones, and turning it upside down. So in this case, we're looking at the Avengers and their inevitable demise. So what if the Avengers are all dead or were all murdered? And I liked how this was connected to a moment in the MCU rather than a specific cinematic story that we've seen. This is affecting multiple characters. We see how it affects Nick Fury. We see how it affected Hank Pym. We see how it affects Loki, and really changing the course of the events that would have happened from our traditional MCU timeline. The animation was absolutely great. The visuals were fantastic. I will never forget Hulk popping like a zit. That was intense. But with that, this isn't a perfect episode. As I mentioned before, that plot hole with Thor, I just don't see how that was meant to work, especially with how the events went down in the MCU. Thor was a big introduction for Shield's awareness, and I just don't know if that makes sense. So I'm going to give this episode a 3.7 out of 5 dead Avengers. So
Wow.
I'm just going to jump in here one more time to try and to justify that Thor scene. Because, okay, even if that Thor wasn't on the file or anything like that, if he's following Nick Fury to try and stop him from doing these stuff, he's listening to all his communications. So as soon as he gets word of this mystical hammer appearing in the middle of the New Mexico desert, he's going to be like, maybe I will head that way. He's probably latching a ride on Fury as far as we know, because he seems to always be where that's happening until Culver University.
But then he's wasting his time. If he's like going around killing Avengers, he's wasting his time. Like maybe there's a mythical creature or being attached to this hammer that will just happen to show up while I'm waiting in the rain in the desert a day or two after this hammer falls. It is lucky timing. He just fluked into it. It's the one unexplained. I'm with Justin on this one. It's getting fiery here.
Before we move on to Nate, just the last little point here. If this is all based off of the existing moments in the MCU, I don't know if they did a good enough job of justifying, how Fury would have potentially recruited him, or even hinted at the idea, because in the events of the MCU, that's not how this all happened. It was his introduction that led them to being a part.
Hank Pym says you would recruit him in a heartbeat. So the fact that he just was in the right place at the right time and killed the guy, I think that's all it was. He followed Fury and someone showed up and he managed to kill him because, again, he saw the potential for someone to come back and, be a hero in his words.
Sure. I just feel like I get the idea that, yes, he could have been someone that Fury would have recruited 100% because he ends up recruiting him and attaching him to the Avengers. But I don't know. Just like Nate and Kevin were saying, they could have spent a little bit more time tightening that up. hence why I just don't think that this is a perfect episode. So
I do want to just quickly shout out Darcy, because you just mentioned it. You would have recruited him in a heartbeat. Fantastic writing. Great job, Marvel.
Yeah.
The visuals and the lighting with this episode I thought were fantastic. I think the outside of the coffee house when Nick Fury is contemplating calling Captain Marvel, I'm like, I want a painting of that. And we keep getting that throughout this series. And I noticed that in this episode. I did enjoy this episode, much like you guys. Probably the most Twilight Zone-esque episode ever. Because I am used to, with Twilight Zone, I think the majority of their episodes usually end pretty dark. Getting to see Nick Fury as the protagonist of this episode was fun, and I thought the voice acting was comparable to episode 1. But where episode 2, as I mentioned, took characters, flipped them on their heads, and stayed with them, this episode just moves a little too quick for me. The focus was really on the momentous week of the Avengers Initiative, which, while I enjoyed what they did with it and kind of how they made it into this murder mystery, I would have liked a little more time with each character, the reactions to the deaths, and, of course, with Hank Pym. And the reveal with Hank Pym didn't hit for me as much because I think, again, it's just I'm not as up on the comics. So, it made sense to use someone that was practically invisible, but the reveal didn't blow me away. In fact, if it was Scott Lang, I probably would have been more shocked, and that would have stuck with me a little bit more. But again, I totally understand from a comic books fan side of things of wanting to see this realized, so I think that's really cool. Such a dark concept, had so much fun with it, and all the quips you would expect from Nick Fury, Phil Coulson, and Natasha Romanoff throughout. I just loved it. I ate it all up. So I'm giving this episode a 4 out of 5 dead Avengers. They couldn't find any Hulk in my review here. But that's it for our third episode of Watch Club for Marvel's What If. We hope you enjoyed this week's episode of Watch Club, and if you did, make sure to subscribe to us wherever you like to listen to podcasts if you haven't already. And also, you might ponder the question, what if you want to write into the show with your thoughts or predictions on the shows we cover in Watch Club? Well, for that question, I'm going to throw it over to our resident timekeeper, Justin.
They can reach us at wearegeekcentric@gmail.com. That's wearegeekcentric@gmail.com.
It sounded like
the Rod Sterling or something.
Yeah.
I like that. There you go. Well, it's kind of sounded like your narrator voice, but he was like, he's had a rough day or something. Like he's a little tired.
He just wants to go home and have a smoke.
There you go. Keep in mind, we also have a ton of other episodes covering some of the latest and greatest content out soon and out now. And for instance, we have our spoiler-free review for Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, which is in theaters September 3rd. And our spoiler-free review for Only Murders in the Building. Oh, and we also dropped our first trailer drop episode with our thoughts on an immediate reaction to the trailer for Spider-Man No Way Home. And Darcy got to join us on that one as well. So stoked for those episodes. So go give those episodes a listen and a 5-star review if you don't mind. Justin, Darcy, and Kevin, thank you so much for joining me for this Watch Club. And even though we do not, cannot, and will not interfere, we are the Watchers.